Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Limitless Womb Man. I'm Gina, natural holistic mystic. This podcast is about shining your light. It's about how do we bridge the gap between women and men, and so that we can foster deeper understanding and compassion. And it's just about all of that and everything more. So I am really excited to introduce my next guest. Her name is Sandra. That's so funny. We can't edit this. Her name is Dr. Xina Gooding Broderick. She's a trailblazing leader, entrepreneur, and mother whose life journey is a testament to resilience, love, and self-empowerment. From navigating challenges of being a single mother, pursuing her ambitions, and becoming an amazingly successful, happily married entrepreneur. As the founder of the CEO of Mother of Abundance, Xina empowers ambitious mothers in leadership roles, equipping them with the tools to create balance, success, and lasting impact. Xina, I'm so happy to have you here. We will explain my little trip up in a little while, and you may have a few trip ups too.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll have a little joke, and I'll explain that in a little bit. So, how are you?
Do you know what? I am really happy and I'm so excited to be here talking with you like this. For the people who are watching and listening, Gina and I have known each other since we were teenagers. It's a long time. And we are connected. We are connected.
100%, 100%. I love that you accepted my invitation to come on my podcast because I really value you as a human being and also your journey. I'm so impressed with everything that you've achieved and what you've become. And as you said, we've known each other since teenagers, which will explain the little trip up in names, because you might hear Xina call me Grace by accident, because that's we've got family names that we have attached ourselves to, and sometimes we trip up. So yes. Don't worry if you do that, it's okay.
And the same with you.
Yeah. So I'd love to know a little bit more about your personal journey in terms of something that was a pivotal moment in your life that led you to embrace your potential.
Wow. Okay. So as you know, I lived in London for many years. So I'm originally from here, Leeds. And I was down there for a good while before re-meeting my husband and getting married to him and then moving back to Leeds. And when I was there for 3 years, I think I had to return to Leeds in 2009. My father got really ill. And he asked me and my husband if we could take care of his business. And at that time, I was really a happy at-home mother with our youngest son. So it was a big decision to make. It wasn't one that we could make lightly. And we decided to run that business. And that changed everything for me. It's one scenario that I can say where I've had to step forward as a leader. But it was a big deal because not only did my career change, but I was now working full time with my husband, who also was running the parlour with me. It changed my private life because I was really happy looking after my youngest son at home. And then to facilitate going into full-time work, I needed to then put my son into nursery. So it was, there was a lot of upheaval and I really had to step up. And in stepping up, I had a new position in the community as well, as someone who could be trusted, someone who could be respected, and I made sure that I did not abuse that, because I I have a conscience and it's alive and kicking, and I needed to be able to put my head down on my pillow at night and rest peacefully, right? So just a lot of privilege came with the confidence that people would place in me and my husband. And I really need to step into that. I needed to step up and step into that and try not to be afraid. The transition was tough because my father had left that business. He died very quickly after he became ill. I think from the time of prognosis to the time he died, it was about 7.5 weeks. Yeah. It was what I call a slow, sudden death. It was just really quick. And he'd left the business equally to all 6 of his children. And that brought its own set of challenges because we're from different mothers. We'd never worked together on anything before. And it was quite clear that there was good reason for that. It just didn't work out. And we bought the other siblings out and continued on with that. But what it meant was that because of the way that business was, and because of how close I was to my father, and I was his primary carer, and it was nothing to do with his other children not liking him as much. It's nothing like that. It was just that because I was an at-home mum and I was based in Leeds, not all of his children were based in Leeds, I was in a position to become his primary carer. So I went from being his primary carer to running the funeral parlour. The first funeral I directed was his, and it was massive. And I was tasked with asking him, what do you want for your funeral? What, and I was so frightened of asking. And he said, I want a funeral befitting of a funeral director. Oh man, we've got to pull all the stops out then. So, we had Dove releases, we had lanterns lit, we had the New Orleans band, we had gospel singers, we had everything, and it was massive. It was so big that it was in the papers. And that was a high bar for me to go in, at that level. My first funeral, I was flanked by 2 other directors. So he had 3 funeral directors at his funeral. There was a canon, a bishop, the Lord Mayor of Leeds, I think, was there speaking for him. It was huge. It was really, really huge. And it really meant that I went in at a high level and I couldn't lower it. I could only get better. But it also meant I was dealing with grieving families. I did that funeral on Friday. My first day of full-time work was the Monday after that, dealing with grieving families whilst dealing with the loss of my dad as well. So I've had quite a unusual, and profound sort of dropped into leadership in a big way, and having to really make it work.
Wow. Now, I was expecting a powerful story, but what a way to find your way forward and be commanded to stand up. That is amazing. And with your husband as well, that must have been beautiful to have his support, actually, because when I met you, obviously you were single, and by the time you'd moved back, I think obviously you met him and then you moved back, but doing that on your own would have been a much more challenging. I can't imagine the support that must have provided. And how do you think that impacted your the way you connected with him, and has it impacted how you connected with other couples, as going on and doing that business and working with other husbands and wives and stuff like that?
Well, I would say to anybody who would speak with me long enough to hear this, I am really in love with my husband, Peter. He is appropriately named. I call him my rock. And the way that he supported me and my dad when my dad was ill gave me carte blanche, really, to support my dad as much as I could, support our children as much as I could, support our community as much as I could, because he'd be like, yeah, Xina, You go for that. You do that. There was a point when I was looking after my dad. It must have been about 10 o'clock at night. Our youngest son, he was at home with Peter. And my dad said to me, tell me the truth. When you go home tonight, do you think you're going to have arguments? Do you think Peter's going to, you know, complain about you being here so late? And I said, Peter, no. I said, no, not him. And I went home and I said, do you know, Daddy's worried that you're going to be wound up and annoyed and all the rest of it, because I'm at his house a lot throughout the day and in the evenings. He said, I'm going to have a conversation with Daddy. And he said to my dad, Daddy, Xina's just going to go out the room. I just need to have a conversation with you. And my dad was like, bloody hellfire, I think I'm going to get a bollocking, pardon my French. I hope that's not going to upset any of your listeners. And Pete was like, no, but I do need to, we need to have an understanding. And he said to my dad, first thing, I know that you are worried about your business, and I want you to know that I have everything in hand. I'm taking care of the families, and you know, I'm keeping you abreast, so you know everything that's happening. You do not need to worry. And the second thing is, Sandra, my family name, right? One of my family names, because Xena is also a family name, tells me that you're worried that we argue when she comes home after speaking to you. And he told my dad this story. He said, when my mother, this is what Peter said to my dad, when my father had died, my mother she was getting on, she was frail. There are 8 of her children, 8 including Peter, right? He's the youngest of 9, but one died at 18. So there's now left with 8 children. And he said, and we had a rota to take care of my mum. And some of us were better at keeping up the rota than others, but I would go every day. And my ex-wife used to complain and say, why does it always have to be you? Why are you the one always going? Why does it always have to be you? And he said, Daddy, I had to say to my ex-wife, that's my mum. And I don't actually need a rota to tell me to go and look after my mother. And Sandra coming and looking after you is the right thing to do. She feels a need to be with you, and I understand it, and I respect it, and I support it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And my dad was like, that's told me then. But that is how Peter is. We have a connection on family. We understand the importance of cohesive family. And I think we connect really well with couples who have that same core value. So we're not really, you know, if couples are being rude to each other or disrespectful to each, we're not really in that scene, to be honest. Don't judge, but it's not really our scene. But the couples that we are around, whether they're married or not, by the way, they tend to be respectful of each other. Family's a real strong core value for them. Community is a real strong core value for them. And whether people are married or not, whether they're in a couples relationship or not, they tend to be the kind of people we gravitate towards.
That's really powerful. And that's actually quite interesting, because I was going to ask you, how do you navigate misunderstandings or communication barriers in your relationships? What's the key? Because it sounds like you have a very solid connection and bond. And obviously, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you never have any arguments. I don't know. But what if there is something? How do you manage it? How do you bridge it?
Okay, so we very rarely argue. In the years that we've been together, I remember us having difficulties either with our children or when when I was pregnant with our youngest. I remember we had, and I can't even remember what was over, you know. If I can remember, I'll say, because it might help somebody who's facing the same thing. I think it had a lot to do with how we started out in our relationship and what I really wanted from a relationship. And I prayed before Peter and I came together. Peter almost came out of the blue. I say, hand on heart, he was the answer to my prayers, because I had a very specific prayer. I'd come out of a very difficult divorce to my first husband. And I said to God, either can I have the man of my dreams, or can I just be left on my own with my child? Because I do not want any drama. I've had so much drama with men that I've had enough to last me a lifetime. And I honestly would be happy to be single in peace with my child than have another man that's just gonna send me round the bend. So either I'll be on my own happy with my child, or send Mr. Right. No more sorting the wheat from the chaff, because clearly I can't do that very well. So I leave that to you, and start to think in my mind, you know, what are the what's on the wish list? And I remember thinking, well, I want them to be solvent. I don't want to have to take on anybody's financial problems, because I've got my son to think about. And I have to give my son a shout out, because it's actually your nephew. Yeah. I have to give him a shout out. He's actually your nephew. Thank God, thank God, thank God. It's actually your nephew. But I was thinking, I don't want this conveyor belt of men that I'm testing out in front of my son. I need to just send me someone, because I'm not looking and I can't do a good job of it anyway. So just sort that out. And I was thinking, yeah, what do I need? What do I want? And I was thinking, yeah, I want someone who is not argumentative, but is firm. I want someone who's assertive, please, because I speak my mind, right? And I can be direct, and some people might find that very difficult to deal with. Most of the people in my circles, they respect my candor, because they know that I don't like being horrible to people. I don't like being rude to people. That's not my bag. And they like the honesty. They know that they can trust what I'm saying. So I needed someone who's honest, someone who's kind. But what I prayed for, because I didn't go into looks either, because I've been out with somebody who was my total dream eye candy before, and that just didn't work out. So clearly that wasn't the key to happiness in a relationship, right? And I just said, I prayed and I said, I want to be able to love this man with all my heart and not be made a fool of. And that was the prayer. And then when Peter resurfaced, he must have come a week, 2 weeks after I'd been praying, and then I just sort of left it. And then about 2 or 3 weeks later, I phoned his sister, who was a really close friend of mine. And she said, I always ask for the rundown. Like I said, they're from a big family, right? And she used to give me the rundown, which I loved, which was the eldest child all the way down to the youngest, which is Peter, right? And she told me about everybody, how everybody was. And she came to Peter, she said, oh, you know what? Let's phone him. Let's phone him. I was like, okay, this is a bit unusual. All right, let's phone him. And she phoned him, and we had a conversation. He'd said, oh, I'll get your number from Maggie, his sister. I thought, okay, but it was London speak, right? Say things like that to be polite, but we're really too busy to follow up, yeah? So I thought, oh yeah, probably not going to happen, but it's no big deal. The intention's there. But he did phone, and he phoned a few weeks after I'd been consistently saying that prayer. And it was very clear in my mind that in order for me to have somebody that I could love with all my heart and not be made a fool of, I also needed to be that person who he could love with all his heart and not be made a fool of. So it sort of settled in my mind, what do I need to be worthy of the man I'm praying for? And I had to do some self-work. So I'd come out of that divorce, I'd done self-work. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't half a woman looking for a man to complete me. I wanted to be the whole woman where a man could make me twice the person I was. And he's the whole man, and I can make him twice the man he is, or twice the person he is, because of how well we connect and love each other, and because of how well we can show up for one another. So I was really clear going in what I wanted and what I was prepared to do to meet that standard. Because what I didn't want was to be, you know, complaining about oh many dogs and all that kind of stuff. I was raising a man, right? I didn't want to be one of those bitter women who I said, oh, men are horrible, except for you. You know, it doesn't make any sense, does it? It doesn't make sense. I thought, I can't give this child mixed messages. I want to be able to demonstrate what I'm saying. You're a good man. There are good men. You are a good man. You know, whatever you've seen or witnessed doesn't need to be your playbook. Remember, what you take from your playbook is the things that inspire you and make you happy. And he had that. You know, he had good examples around, and I knew I had as well. No matter how difficult things had been in my relationships, I knew that there were good men. I had the faith because I was raising a good man. He couldn't be the only one. So that's what I went in with that in mind.
Yeah, you know, I love that response, because what seems obvious to me, from hearing you, is the intention you set going into that relationship means that you have had less issues with misunderstandings and this, that, and the other, because you were so clear about who you wanted.
Yeah.
That the only, from what I'm hearing, it's like it's just a matter of maybe if you have a difference of opinion, you might discuss it, work it out, stuff like that. But there wasn't misunderstandings. It was just a connection, and it's very intentional. And I love what you were saying about not wanting to be a woman who's like anti-men and this, that, and the other, because in terms of bridging the gap between women and men, we have to take a step up and be the person, as you said, be the whole person, be the person that you would like to meet, kind of thing. So I love, that's really powerful. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay, so how would you advise someone who feels stuck or limited by the expectations placed on them?
I think that sometimes when we feel stuck, we are not connecting to our inner wisdom or God, our higher self. We're believing a lie, right? And it might not be you believe in a lie because you're stuck. It might be you believe in a lie because of what's keeping you stuck. Truth is that we come from a source that is exponential, right? And the limits that we have, to an extent, are self-imposed. And we might just need to ask ourselves a question: what do I have to gain by remaining in this position? And what do I stand to lose by remaining in this position? And it might just be a question of our why. Why do we want to leave the position we're in? And if we can really analyze and see if that why is big enough, it gets to drown out our fears. It gets to drown out our inhibitions. It gets to drown out the mental blockages that are there. It offers us some clarity, and often gives us a way to move forward. And just quickly going back to the question that you asked me earlier, I want to make sure that I answer that properly for anybody who's watching or listening. This thing about arguments, there's some things that I didn't mention in that. On our wedding day, I spoke in at the speeches meal. I wasn't going to say anything because I can talk, right? I wasn't going to say anything, but I was asked to speak. And I said, in this marriage, there will be three of us. There will be me, there will be Peter, and in between us, there will be God. And I declare that in front of everybody here today. And I am mindful of the fact that I prayed for Peter. I am mindful of the fact that I prayed for someone I could respect. He's never let me down, and I'm mindful of that even now. And the way I talk about him and the way I treat him is a constant affirmation of what I know to be true about our relationship. It's a constant calling in of what I know to be true about our relationship. I can trust him implicitly. So there's no point in me pretending I can or behaving as though I can't, because I'll just be really lying to myself. And actually, I don't want that. I don't want a problematic relationship. I've had enough of that, to be suitably bored of that proposal. And I never wanted a man who I would be justified disrespecting. I wanted somebody who I could respect. So if we do have a disagreement and we don't agree on everything, and I didn't want a yes man because it doesn't really suit my personality type. I need someone who can meet me, and says, you're not right, you're not right, you're not right, you're not right. You need to rethink that. I need someone who can say that to me. But we always wanted to be kind to each other with our disagreements and be able to respectfully say, you need to take your wife's good counsel now, darling. I don't think that's the right way to move forward. And he'll really take it on. If Peter says something, I'll sit up and listen, because he doesn't really ask for much. He's a really low demand person. So for me, it's just easy to just keep loving him all the time. I get to do that. That's what I prayed for. And I get to do that. The poor man. Poor man, poor man, the poor man.
It's wonderful. And you know what I'm hearing? And I've had this suspicion for a while that you feel safe.
Yes. He gives me psychological safety.
Yeah. And I've thought this over the years. I've thought that's what it is. You have that safety in him. You have that trust in him. As you said, you're going to be kind to each other. Even though you have an argument, you can be kind. And people often don't think about that. People think, they say, all's fair in love and war. Not really. Not really, not really, because there's many things you cannot take back once you've said them. So it's not all fair in love and war, because it won't be fair when you've hurt someone so strongly in it, someone you're supposed to love and be your safety net, someone you're supposed to back. If you hurt them in arguments and do nasty things, even the doing nasty things, it's not fair. So I think it's really, I think it's really beautiful to have an example of how this can work so well when you remember to be kind. You remember to be kind, and you honor each other. You seem to have really taken those vows of. I'm not saying that those were your vows, but those to me seem like they should be vows in any relationship. To honor each other and to be kind. To be kind is a very underestimated thing. Some people think that, I don't think it's the same as just being nice. Being nice is a very wishy-washy term to me, because it's surrounded, it's very loaded with expectation of what you think people think. But being kind is a very, it's from you, it's from your soul. It's a conscious, subconscious, unconscious action.
Yeah.
So I love to hear that. That's really, I think, very powerful. And I think a lot of people would love to hear that too, because there are many women we in my circle, as you know, I do a sister circle, and we were talking about how many women in particular, I'm hearing a lot from Black women that are taking time out to not be in a relationship, to just enjoy themselves and know who they are. And this is why when you spoke about this wholeness, it's about us reaching a level of wholeness within ourselves so that when we arrive at whatever it is what we want, we're not coming from a space of lack. We're coming from a space of abundance, and we're bringing all of us to all of someone else to make double of us, as you just said,
Right.
which I really love. I really love that. I love that. And I was just going to say, it's funny because actually, no, I'm going to ask you this question and then I'm going to ask you another one. Yeah, looking at time. Yeah. So what does letting, so thank you for that. And I think it's very powerful. And I hope the listeners really value that as much as I have valued listening to you. What does letting your light shine mean to you? And how do you do that in your life?
Okay, so I think when we are able to fully embrace who we are and show up in that authentic way with as much friction removed from that as possible, and being comfortable with who we are, that's like a conduit to releasing that light, releasing that. So just by stepping up in our true authentic self and being proud of that in a good way, right? I'm not talking about narcissism, but just being able to feel confident about ourselves. And there's that being quite conscious of who we want to be, knowing that, right, it gives us something to work towards. And being able to live in alignment with our core values and show up like that not only allows us to shine our light, but we become a beacon of light to others and attract people who want more of that, who might know there's something, that's attractive, that's drawing. But there can be no denial from anyone who chooses to know me that this is just how I am, right? This is just how I am. And I get to enjoy that. And I purposefully live with joy. I purposefully remove boredom. I purposefully remove friction. I I purposefully might drink this water and say, this is the best water I've ever had in my life. And I don't need to prove that. I just said it, so it is. And I get to enjoy those things, those little everyday things. I remember once before I stopped eating meat, I ate some chicken. And I said to the person I was eating, the best chicken I've ever tasted in my life. And he said, how do you even know that? And I said, because I just said it. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. I said it, so it's so. And if we can get used to speaking our joy into being, what I was saying about my marriage, it's an affirmation of what I want for my relationship. It's repeatedly said. Some people might call it a spell. I call it a prayer, right? That connection, that recognition that I am of abundance. I'm in charge of me. I get to dictate how I show up. That's up to me. And so, given that I'm in charge and no one else can tell me how to feel, then how do I choose to feel? What choice am I going to make?
Yeah.
And there's that knowledge that actually is the truth. When I was talking about people who are stuck, sometimes they are not in alignment with what is actually the truth. The truth is we are in charge. And I try to make it clear that for some people it's not so straightforward. We know that there are people who are in violent relationships. Modern slavery still happens, sex trafficking still happens. These are real things. It's not pretend. But for the majority of us, thank God, that extreme is not our situation. You know, we actually, in real life, get to show up how we choose. So when we recognize and we connect with that truth, the onus really is on us to make that soul, to make it the best water you ever drank in your life, to make it the best chicken you ever tasted in your whole life, guy. You know, it's who there is there to tell you you can't. And how can that possibly be the truth when you know no one else is living in you but you?
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny because with people that I've interviewed so far, everybody at some point when I ask about letting your light shine, truth, the word truth pops up.
Right.
So, I'm starting to feel like this is the key. This is the key, finding your truth and letting your light shine. Being that you, as you said, finding your joy. And I love that, finding the joy in everything. People don't realize that sometimes is so it's so simple, but some people just don't realize you could be stuck in this grey, walking under your grey cloud with the lightning going off, not realizing you can just find the joy in something, even in the thunder. Oh, isn't that an amazing, amazing electric display from nature? Do you get what I mean? There you go, done. You know, it doesn't have to be the worst. So thank you. I love that. I'm going to ask you, what do you think compassion and empathy can play? No. How do you think women and men can better support each other in their personal growth and inner standing?
I think that there's a common way of doing things and a less common approach to doing things in relationships, in coupledom, that I have experienced. So this is not for everybody. I have met people who have had, you know, relationships and they've broken up, and every single relationship has they've broken up amicably, right? And they're still friends and all that. They just drifted apart. That has not been my experience. Right? It's not been my experience. So in my experience and in the circles that I have, and I have to say as well that I am really grateful in all of this. I need to say that I get on with your brother. Yeah, I think it's important that I say that.
Oh yeah, it's true.
Right? Yeah, just putting it out there, right? Don't come for me, Jude. Don't come for me. Yeah, so there's in what I see and in social media and in what makes good drama on TV, you see a lot of friction, you see people disagreeing, you see people being ignited in a negative way, right? So people pushing each other's buttons. But when it comes to supporting each other, I think it's really important to know what those vulnerabilities are, and seeing that your partner's vulnerability is an opportunity to connect on a deeper level rather than an opportunity to really tear them to pieces. Right? So what might be displayed, you know, in common media or whatever, and I might be speaking out of turn here because I don't really watch the news purposefully. I don't really do, you know, soaps and stuff like that, again, purposefully, because I'm very mindful of my intentional programming and what I'm able to put out as a result of what goes in here, right? So there are two paths, you know. One is the one that's on display, reality TV and all that kind of stuff, where you find out that someone in their history was, I don't know, beaten as a child, right? Beaten as a child. And then they're having an argument, and the person says, yeah, just because you were beaten as a child don't mean you have to take it out on me. You know, they see as leverage in an argument, instead of saying, do you know what? This person in your mind, this person was beaten as a child. I'm going to show them that this is not that situation and we can be stronger together. And I'm going to demonstrate that. So it's not just lip service and nice words. You know, it's going to be in how I show up for that person. And I'm not saying be someone's doormat because they have problems. I'm not suggesting that at all, because this works if it's mutual, right? It can't just be that you're respecting someone's vulnerabilities and seeing that as an opportunity to connect on a deeper level, and they're seen as your vulnerabilities as rather convenient buttons to press whenever you have an argument. No, it needs to be mutual understanding. And that can become part of your conditioning. I remember when Peter and I were just courting, and his and I, we had a whirlwind romance, right? So we connected in the July, and in the March we were married. It's quick. Really, really quick. Really, really quick. In fact, after 2 weeks of talking to Peter, I knew I was in love with him. And I knew that if this man would have me, I would be his wife. I would just be his wife. I would be. And had to broach that because we were friends, right? And I thought, oh, this is getting a bit heavy and I don't want things to be awkward. I'm going to have to admit to him, I actually would really like it if we could be more than just friends. So during that courtship, that quite brief courtship, I remember saying, Peter and I were having a conversation about something, and I snapped at him. I can't remember what I said, but he smiled at me and said, I don't really like it when you talk to me like that, you know. I thought, shame. Shame. I had to really think to myself, what are you doing? What you're doing, just because you're close to him doesn't mean this is an opportunity to speak, you know, rough him up just because because of what reason? None in particular, because you're having a bad day or whatever. I don't want a doormat. I don't want someone who is worthy of me being horrible to. I don't want that. And really thinking, what do I want? If I'm in charge, what do I get to have? And I wanted the best relationship in the world, the best marriage in the world. And I reinforced that. And it's the same with how I choose to connect in my relationships. And it's not just with Peter, by the way. You know me, right? Always try and connect in a way that is positive, and just nice. You know, you said the word nice. Yeah, I mean the deeper meaning nice, not the passive
Yeah.
subservient nice. I mean just goodness as a core value, you know. Just being able to do that, because it's just so much nicer without the friction. This is abundance, right? This is where I don't need to pay anything to be having this exquisite exchange with you, my dear friend and family member. This is wealth. This is wealth because I say it so. And so it is. And I get to really enjoy that beyond a molecular level, right?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Do you know what? I am so glad I went with that question over the other one, because everything you said was so good. It was so good. That was just gold. That was just gold. You know, I loved what you said about not using people's vulnerabilities against them. And so many couples do that. I always say to people, scoring points is what game are you playing? When you think you've got one up, or when you're going to set, you know, I've had friends in the past who set partners up so that they could trick them to see what they're going to, like, where's the joy in that relationship when you're just treating your partner like a component? They're not a partner then, are they? They're a component. There is someone you're why I'm trying to use big words and I can't even say them. Strategizing against. You know, I got it. But okay, I appreciate that, because I think that's really, really powerful. The one, do not use your partner's vulnerabilities as to score points, and I'm so for that. I really agree with you on that. Okay, so coming up to closing of this. So before we do, first of all, I'd like you to talk a bit more about what you do with them, with your company, and how you work with women. I'd love you to elaborate a bit more on that. People will be able to get in contact with Xina, because I'm going to put all of her details in the comment box. And also, if you have enjoyed this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow this podcast, and share it with your friends. I'd love that for people to do. But I'd love to know more, as I said, about your company and your quote. Actually, can you give me your quote?
I'm going to try and give that quote, because it was funny, because when I was thinking about the quote, I was thinking, Xina, you're going to have to write this down, because it actually it mentions memory in the quote.
Yeah.
And I thought,
everyone, I do. Everyone does make sure they write their quote down, because it is something that you'd remember without thinking, but when you have to be on demand to say it, now you need it written.
absolutely. So bear with me.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. So
yeah.
This is the quote. The quote is, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that is probably my favorite quote, and it's by Maya Angelou. It's a very well-known quote.
Yes.
And people say that about me because I'm enough, right? So, so when I show up, people kind of know, right?
We're not together.
Right? We're not together. So people often say that, and because I am quite conscious in how I do want people to feel good, around me, I like that to be my, what is left after I leave the room. That is my brand, right?
Yes.
What people say about you when you're not in the room, and that is my brand. And I think that actually segues smoothly into what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a leadership consultant, and I work with mothers on the C-suite who are over the age of 40, because that is something I can speak to with great authority. That's me, right? And I've mentioned at the beginning of this podcast how I came into leadership in a big way, but what is not well known or well spoken about, about this actually, Gina, but a lot of people won't, that I was actually homeless in London when I went down. I don't know if you remember when I lived in Centre Point and you were trying to help me get a place in Barnes or something like that, but you tried to help me.
Yeah.
You came with me to try and get housing or something like that. There's cobwebs on those memories. But the first leadership role I actually had was for Centre Point, which is a homeless charity or a homeless organisation. And I was in the hostel in Vauxhall, a massive hostel there. And I remember being one of the people who was living there and quite vocal, because I'm vocal, right? And then them saying, you need to be on the board really for the tenants committee. So I went on the board for that, and then realised being in leadership is not so easy. I'd be like, we need to have more of this, we need to have more of that. And then when I was on that board now, it's like, how do we do it? What's the solution to the problem you're seeing? You're now part of the solution. What's your suggestion? So I have been in leadership roles for decades. That was when I was 18 years old, and been through trials and tribulations, and I see what mothers in leadership roles have to deal with. They have to deal with everything that the next leader has to deal with, and then they're responsible for the lives that they are raising. And often, no matter how senior that woman becomes, she's still the children's main caregiver. Even if she's in a cohesive, loving, caring relationship, it still tends to be her. We saw that during COVID, right? When a lot of women were staying home to homeschool their children. Even in my situation, I stayed home, got a wonderful husband, but he was the one who chose to go out, and I was the one who chose to stay home and homeschool our youngest. So that's where I lead from. I help mothers to use their business acumen, their personal lives, their professional lives as a powerful leadership development tool. And that's what I do. And I do that on behalf of management consultancies in their client organizations. And I love what I do. I love it. Love it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Interestingly enough, when I was a teenager, I stayed in Centre Point in Soho. Yeah, that's where I was there. Yeah, when I was on my one of my runaway from home
Was it the one on Berwick Street?
Yep.
I was in that one too.
Yep. And then you know what was really interesting? Later on as a social worker, I had children placed there. I know. And I would contribute to charity. That's the only charity that I actually ever think to give money to or to do things for, because of my journey through Centrepoint and them stopping me from being a vulnerable child on the West End streets, you know? So yeah, they're not stopping me, but helping me, protecting me, I should say, from being a vulnerable child on the West End streets in my little tender years. So yeah. Big shout out to Centrepoint. They're doing good work, still do. Do you know what, Xina? I feel so emotional. Thank you so much. I feel a bit emotional about it at the moment, but listen, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on and just being the powerhouse that you're not enough. You can never be. Oh dear, sorry. Did it freeze then? You can never be too much. You're just perfect. Just wonderful. Thank you so much. Love you. And I will speak to you soon. Thanks, everyone. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and like.